and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me today to break down the Alloy 400, this time at Nashville Motor Speedway, it's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? Yeah, this is a race I'm pretty excited about because I love myself some honky-tonk country music. Going down the Nashville, Tennessee there, you know, the birthplace of country, I guess you could say. It's like the most popular place for that genre of music. And the fact that we didn't get a race last week, so I was suffering from FOMO. Like, I didn't know what to do with myself last Sunday, so I'm extremely excited for this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it because like F1 is kind of like that where it's like every other week or so. Sometimes there's back-to-back weeks, but for the most part, there's a big gap. And it kind of builds up the excitement and suspense. And if NASCAR went to a schedule like that, would I be more excited for each individual race, or would I be mad that we're missing out on a bunch? So I don't know, but yeah, I'm definitely nice to have the break. Obviously, we got some football episodes in talking MVPs and Super Bowl futures betting. So if you're interested in that, go check those out. But I'm happy to be back talking NASCAR. Happy to talk some Nashville, and happy to hopefully pick some winners this week. Brian, we have an interesting track, obviously only second time they have rented on this series. Very similar to, I guess Dover would be like the most, the closest comp. It's obviously concrete. It's obviously a flat. So there's a few things that we can kind of look at for pricing wise. So let's jump into it. Let's look at the odds and see if we can't find some winners for the people. So head over to Action Network, and as you see, Kyle Larson is the betting favorite across the board. Was dominant here last year. Obviously has been, was amazing last year kind of across the board, but was really, really good at Nashville, really good on the mile long tracks. So that makes sense that he's there. Right behind him, Kyle Busch, who has been on fire of late.
Yes, sir.
Running really well. Ross Chastain, our guy, nice to see him up there. Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin. So with that initial group, thoughts, feelings, bets you're making, anything there?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting to note that during the race last year, Kyle Larson was the only driver of the 7 guys who led a lap who led more than 13 laps. He led like 126 laps or something. It was something ridiculous. 264 of the 300 laps Kyle Larson led last year. So he absolutely ran away with the race, but he's he's nowhere close to the same form as he was last year. I mean, he's just been kind of okay this season. So, at 4.5 to 1 at most sports books, that's just not a number that I could find myself getting to. And, when you look at the guy right behind him, Kyle Busch, like you said, he's been on fire of late. 7 of his last 9 have been finishes inside the top 7. He's performed really well at other similar type tracks, according to our buddy iFantasy Race, Phoenix and Richmond this season. He's led like a ton of laps at those tracks. He qualified really well at those tracks. Like for me, Kyle Busch is kind of the starting point for the outrights.
Yeah, he makes a lot of sense, and obviously will be somebody that a lot of people will be drawn to, mainly because of the things you said, because of his recent form, because of his success at these similar tracks. Last year, Kyle Larson did win with our guy Ross Chastain finishing second. It was right there. If you go by average rating, he was down a little bit further, but makes sense that he's in the 7 to 8 range. But the guy right behind him, Chase Elliott, is going to be the first guy I'm going to add to my card. I'm feeling Chase this week. If we go by the Dover comp, he won Dover. He was really, really good there, led 73 laps. Started 4th, finished 1st, did really well. Big fan of him this week. I'm going to try and get him in some matchups and some other stuff, but for my outright card, he is the first guy going on the list at 8 to 1.
Yeah, that's a good call. I mean, last year at this race, he finished really well. He was one of 3 guys to lead double-digit laps, with Larson and the aforementioned Kyle Busch being the other 2. But he got disqualified, so of course, we don't know what's going on with that crap. It's probably some stupid thing having to do with weight of the car or something. I don't
Yep.
know. But yeah, getting him at that 8-1 or 9-1 number is fantastic. Knowing that he's been racing better or as good, if not better, than his teammate Kyle Larson on the season.
Yep. And as I mentioned, the Dover comp, he won that race too. So
Yeah.
big fan of him this week. I also think I like Denny Hamlin a lot this week, and I'm not traditionally on Denny Hamlin, so it feels a little weird for me. But getting 10-1 on him feels like a good number for a guy who at intermediate tracks tends to do really, really well.
Yeah, Hamlin's a guy who's kind of come on of late. He's been driving a lot better. I know the finishes aren't necessarily showing how good he's been. I mean, he's been crashing or issues the pit row
Yep.
still for that team. But I mean, prior to the last 2 finishes, he has a 4th and a 1st. And so Denny at 10-1. The guy who really caught my eye though is Ryan Blaney at 12-1. He's due for a regular season win this year. He led like over 126 laps at both Phoenix and Richmond earlier on this season. He's actually, according to our buddy iFantasy Race Again, he has the overall top speed ranking at those 2 tracks, which are, I guess, like the most comparable to Nashville in terms of like the flatness of the track. So Blaney at 12-1 for a guy who's due to win in the regular season, and knowing that Penske has been driving a lot better recently is the guy that's going to be on my card.
Yep. Death, taxes, and Brian being interested in Ryan Blaney. It's clockwork. And actually ran really well for the most part at Dover. Qualified 5th, was actually 1st after stage 2. And looks like because of issues ended up finishing 26th. But led 8 laps, was pretty good.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, has been really fast. So don't fault you for going there. I think it makes a lot of sense. The next kind of crew behind there, Joey Logano, William Byron, Martin Truex, Tyler Reddick, Alex Bowman, all of your normal heavy hitters, all kind of solid names in this range. The one thing I will say, Brian, is I'm going to be on the lookout for Daniel Suarez type. What is this guy doing at this number in this field?
Yeah.
Because we talked about him prior to Sonoma. Said, why is his number up here? It doesn't really make sense. Goes out and wins the race.
That is
So maybe
very
we
true.
should use our intuition a little bit more when things like that pop up, and figure out why we're not betting that person, because he won the race, which was awesome to see.
I will say, like, my guy, Willie B, I mean, I'm normally on him pretty much on a week-to-week basis, but when you look at his results this year, he really only has like 3 or 4 good finishes, and every other race outside of those has been outside of the top 10 or, lower in the teens. So he's not somebody who's been running consistently enough for me to want to go to the betting window right now on an outright. It's more of like a placement bet. And especially too, like, he hasn't qualified very well the last couple of races either. So his numbers have actually been better post qualifying than you can get before it. So he's somebody I'd be waiting on.
Christopher Bell, 20-1.
I don't know how many times I'm going to say this. Like, he's like the qualifying king this season. His numbers always drop prior to race day. So if you have a sports betting market that you play on, like, he is like the perfect week to week driver to just bet him early, go to the window, sell off, and then take a larger number on Sunday, knowing that he's not going to win the race apparently, and it's not going to happen because every week I bet it, he doesn't even come close. So
yeah, it's just an interesting number for a guy who's been really strong on this style of track. Ran decent at Dover. I think he was. Where was I? I was looking at
Dover, he finished 4th. He
4th.
placed 6th at Richmond.
Yeah.
He had some issues at Phoenix. He wound up finishing 26th there. But I mean, other than last week at Sonoma road course, which you cannot use that as like a measuring point for an oval track. Prior to that, he had 5 consecutive top tens. I mean, he's qualified inside the top 3 in 4 straight prior to Sonoma. I mean, if he goes out and he does that again, this 18 or 20 to 1 number is plummeting down closer to the 10 or 12 to 1. So that's
And
why I
as
say,
you
like,
mentioned, a guy that we want to buy before qualifying and then sell after qualifying to
yeah,
make that
exactly. I mean,
weekly money. Because I think that's 100% the move. Kevin
even
Harvick
like
is interesting here too, but I don't know if I can do it to myself again.
Harvick is not somebody I'm going with an outright anytime soon. He just does not have the speed or like the long run capability to win a race like this. I mean, 300 laps. The one thing we know about him is he's probably going to finish the race. And just of note, keep this in mind, only half of the field last year finished on the lead lap. So you can expect some big name guys to potentially finish a lap down or get a couple laps down, with pit cycling and all that stuff. But a
Yeah.
guy like Harvick, he knows how to navigate that kind of stuff. So, I mean, if you like him, that 25 to 1 number is pretty good, but he's somebody I'm shopping more in like the top 10 or even top 5 market right now.
Yeah, or go to those head-to-heads and find
Yep.
the names where he's kind of undervalued a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, real quick on Harvick, I don't want to fast forward too much, but he's minus 140 to top 10 at DK right now. Like that's a good, that's a decent number prior to qualifying.
Yep, I think it makes a lot of sense. He was obviously 9th last year or he was 9th this year at Dover. He was, where is he? He was top 5 last year at Nashville. So, top 10 at anything close to minus 150, I think is a good bet.
Yep.
And then obviously top 5. We'll dive into that. Eric Almirola is another name. Based on last year, he probably should be more interesting, but like this year, he hasn't been the guy that we saw last year that was really competitive in some of these races. So I don't know that I'm going to get there. Maybe head-to-head market and try and squeeze a top 10 or something out of him. But
that's what I was going to say. Top 10 market for Almirola is something that's also in play. I mean, he's finished 17th or better in each of the last 3 races. He's got a 5th place finish at Gateway, so he could potentially sneak inside there.
Ditto for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Finished 2nd at Dover. Finished pretty strong, I believe, last year. Where is he at? Yeah, he was 6th last year. So does well on this style of track. He's still Ricky Stenhouse Jr., so you have to be ready for him to spin out and end up in the wall at any moment. But I think his outright number is interesting enough. I like with Harvick, I'm probably more in the head-to-head top 5, top 10 market with him.
Yeah.
But if you want to throw a few shekels on 60 to 1, I think it's a fine number to get down on.
Yeah, these guys at these numbers are more like the 10th of a unit type wagers or like a 5th of a unit, if you got some extra winnings that you can play with. But I mean, when you go into a race like this, kind of at the shorter tracks, you really are going with like the top of the field kind of guys. I don't see anybody coming from like that 30 to 35 to 1 number to win this race.
Yep, I agree. Let's talk top 10 market and see if we can't find some values. A lot of these guys are going to be overpriced. Just not numbers I'm going to get to. Alex Bowman at minus 150 isn't the worst thing in the world considering where he sits on the outright market. If you can get that. Interesting that Tyler Reddick is minus 200 yet longer odds to win the race. That's interesting. Christopher Bell at minus 150 is fine. Harvick at minus 140, as you mentioned, makes a lot of sense. Almirola to top 10 at even money. It feels like a little bridge too far.
I mean, like I said, he's a guy who could sneak in there as long as he doesn't have any issues. It's just whether or not over the long run he can maintain the speed.
Yeah. Stenhouse at 2 to 1 to top 10 is going on the card. I'm a glutton for punishment, Brian, and I'm going to set myself up to hate myself at the end of this, but 2-1 to top 10 on a guy that has done well. I don't know how that doesn't make sense to me. He should be what these guys are, like
Yeah.
around plus 100. So if you can get that number, run to FanDuel and bet it right now. Cindric, interesting. I mean, and his number makes sense, right? I don't know what's going on with Stenhouse at Caesars and DraftKings, but apparently they are not fans of his.
There's one right there. Chris Buescher 5-1 at DraftKings. He finished second at Sonoma. He's did really well at both Phoenix and Richmond this year. He had 10th place at Phoenix, 15th at Richmond, finished 8th after qualifying on pole at Dover. I mean, 5-1 for somebody that's been driving as well as he has in some of these races. It is way too big of a number to avoid.
Yep, and that's for a top 10, Brian. It's not like
exactly.
It's not a top 5 price. When Bubba's 3-1, when Allmendinger's 3-1, that's crazy. That's crazy. It's banana sandwich.
That is absolutely bonkers that would be even available.
Let's look at top 5. Obviously, FanDuel won't have that, but DK will. Let's see if we can't find any decent numbers.
And I just checked to make sure that it's still actually available. Chris Buescher is still 5-1 at DK to top 10. So that is like a go bet that now before they realize their mistake.
Yep. That is I qualified third, and now that number is minus, it's probably like plus 175 or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Interesting numbers here. I like Elliott. I like Hamlin. Your Blaney to top 5 at plus 150 is fine.
Ooh, that is definitely going on the card.
I think betting a lot of these guys are interesting. Alex Bowman at plus 250. Christopher Bell plus 250. I'm going to add Christopher Bell too.
And now that you say that, I'm just going back to my roots, and I'm gonna go back to the outright board, and I'm gonna add Bell on an outright too this week at 20-1. I mean, I would be absolutely miserable if he winds up winning a race, and I did not actually have a bet on it.
Yep, I think that is the move. So let's see. Actually, add 20. Like we mentioned, we can sell it short. We can figure it out. So unfortunately, Brian's internet went out mid-show. So we were unable to talk head-to-heads. Brian and I will update the head-to-heads on Twitter, as well as on Saturday when we record post-qualifying. We'll get those to you as soon as possible. Make sure you like, rate, review, all the good stuff with the show. Appreciate everyone checking it out. We will be back on Sunday morning ahead of the race in your feed. So make sure you are subscribed, turn the bell notification, do all that stuff. And we'll update our betting cards and everything on Twitter on Thursday. So for Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert. You guys have a good one, and we'll talk to you next time.